The bank manager kept staring at his screen, then at me, then back at the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard like he was afraid it might bite him. "I just need to be very clear," he said slowly. "You are authorizing a full reversal of every transfer made in the last 6 months." I nodded once. "Yes," I said. "Every dollar she touched." He swallowed. "That will leave her account at 0. I didn't blink. "Proceed." Because 6 months earlier, my stepmother had stood in my late mother's bedroom holding my mom's diamond bracelet in her hand and told me it was no longer mine. And I had smiled, I had nodded, and I had let her believe she won. The house smelled wrong the morning after the funeral. Sharp, clean, artificial, lemon polish. My mother hated lemon scents. She said they smelled like someone trying to erase a memory instead of honoring it. But my stepmom, Linda, loved it. She'd been helping. Helping meant rearranging things that hadn't moved in 30 years. Helping meant opening drawers that weren't hers. Helping meant claiming space. My father sat in his recliner, staring at the television without seeing it. The news played quietly, but his eyes were empty, hollow, like grief had turned him into furniture. I stood barefoot in the hallway, the hardwood cold under my feet, listening to drawers open and close. Linda was in my mom's bedroom. I hadn't gone in there yet. That room still smelled like her. Lavender soap. Old books, a faint trace of her perfume clinging to the scarves inside the closet. Then I heard it, the jewelry box, the soft wooden click as the lid opened. My chest tightened. My mom's jewelry wasn't expensive in the way people imagine wealth. No vaults, no safe deposit boxes, but every piece had a story. The pearl necklace Dad gave her on their 10th anniversary, the gold hoops she wore every Sunday, the thin diamond bracelet she wore when she wanted to feel strong. I stepped into the doorway. Linda stood at the dresser, my mother's jewelry laid out like inventory. She didn't look guilty. She looked efficient. "Oh, you're up," she said casually. She picked up the diamond bracelet, my mother's bracelet. "I'm taking this to get it appraised. We need to know what things are worth now." Now, as if grief had a deadline. "That belongs to me," I said. She laughed, not a big laugh, a small one, the kind people use when they think you're confused. "Sweetheart," she said, "your father and I are married. This is marital property." She slipped the bracelet into her palm. "Your mom isn't here anymore." Something in my chest cracked. I looked at my father. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend me, and in that silence, Linda learned something important. No one was going to stop her. The first thing that went missing was the pearl necklace. I didn't notice it right away. Grief makes time feel slippery. Days blur, hours stretch. You forget what you've already cried over and what you haven't dared to touch yet. It wasn't until a week later, when I finally worked up the courage to open my mom's jewelry box myself, that something felt off. The lid lifted easily, too easily. The velvet inside was disturbed, not messy, just rearranged, like someone had been careful, deliberate. The pearl necklace should have been resting on top. My mom always kept it there because it tangled easily. She used to say pearls liked space the same way people did. It wasn't there. I stared at the empty groove where it belonged. My brain tried to fill the gap. Maybe Linda moved it. Maybe she put it somewhere safe. Maybe I was imagining things. I closed the box, opened it again. Still gone. I walked to the kitchen where Linda stood sipping coffee like the house belonged to her. "Have you seen Mom's pearl necklace?" I asked. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that old thing?" she said casually. "I took it with a few other pieces." My stomach dropped. "Took it to where?" She sighed like I was slowing her down. "To a jeweler, to see what was real and what wasn't. A lot of old jewelry is just costume, you know." I clenched my jaw. "You didn't ask." She smiled then, a thin smile. I didn't need to. I looked past her at my father. He stirred sugar into his coffee, Too much sugar. His hands shook slightly. He didn't meet my eyes. Linda continued, "We have expenses now. Funerals aren't cheap. Your mom didn't exactly plan ahead." Something hot flared in my chest. "She had life insurance," I said. Linda waved her hand. "That barely covers anything these days." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, because something inside me had already shifted. If she thought I was weak enough to accept this explanation, then she was arrogant enough to make a mistake later, and arrogant people always do. 2 days passed. Then the diamond bracelet disappeared, the one she held in her hand that morning, the one she told me was marital property. I checked the jewelry box again. The slot was empty. No velvet imprint, no space left behind. It was gone like it had never existed. I didn't confront her this time. I watched. Linda started dressing better. New handbag, fresh manicure. She was lighter somehow, happier. One afternoon she came home humming. Humming? Like the house wasn't filled with echoes of my mother's voice? That night, I overheard her on the phone. "I told you it would sell fast," she whispered excitedly. "Yes, cash. No, I didn't want a paper trail." My fingers went cold. I stood frozen in the hallway, barefoot, breathing shallow. She laughed softly. "Oh, please, it was just sitting there collecting dust. Jewelry is meant to be worn or turned into something useful." Something useful, like money. She hung up and walked past me, stopping when she realized I was there. Her eyes flickered for half a second. Then she smiled. "You scared me. You should announce yourself." I looked at her hands. The new ring. Gold. Thick. Not my mother's, but paid for with her memory. "You sold it," I said quietly. Linda tilted her head. "Sold what?" "My mom's jewelry." She didn't deny it. She crossed her arms. "Some of it." "Some." "Why?" I asked. She shrugged. "Because it was just sitting there. Because your father needs stability. Because grief doesn't pay bills." "And you thought stealing from me would?" She laughed again. "Stealing? Don't be dramatic. You don't even have a receipt." That was the moment, the exact moment when I stopped seeing her as my stepmother and started seeing her as a problem that needed a solution. That night, I went back into my mom's room alone. I sat on the bed and opened the jewelry box slowly, carefully, like I was cataloging a crime scene. I took photos. Every empty space, every missing piece. I opened drawers, checked closets. Gone. All of it. The pearls, the bracelet, the gold hoops, even the cheap little ring my mom wore when gardening. Linda hadn't been picky. She had been thorough. I closed the box and sat there for a long time. Then I stood up, and I did something Linda never expected. I stopped reacting. The next morning I called a jeweler, not the one Linda used, a different one, a quiet man downtown who specialized in estate sales. "I'm looking for records," I told him, "not prices." He hummed thoughtfully. "You'd be surprised what people leave behind." That was the first breadcrumb. Then came the second, a bank alert. Not for my account, for my father's joint account. A transfer notification popped up on his phone while it was charging on the counter. I glanced down without thinking. $5,000. Transferred. Recipient, L. Harmon. Linda. I stared at the screen. My heart started pounding. This wasn't about jewelry anymore. This was about preparation. She wasn't just selling memories. She was building a cushion. I waited until she left for yoga. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with my father. "Did you know Mom's jewelry was sold?" I asked gently. He blinked slowly. "What jewelry?" The anger that rose in me was sharp and clean. "No," I said quietly. "You didn't know." That afternoon, I booked a consultation with a lawyer. I didn't cry in his office. I didn't raise my voice. I laid everything out neatly. Dates, items, transfers. He listened carefully. Then he leaned back in his chair. "She's sloppy," he said. I frowned. What do you mean? She sold inherited property that wasn't hers, then moved the money into an account she controls. He smiled faintly. That's not clever. That's traceable. Something inside me settled. Calm. Cold. How much can I get back? I asked. He looked me in the eye. All of it, he said, and possibly more. I walked out of that office into the sunlight, breathing in deeply. Linda thought she was being smart. She thought she was erasing my mother one bracelet at a time. She had no idea she'd just handed me the receipts. And the law doesn't forget. The first document I found wasn't dramatic. It wasn't labeled confidential or stamped with anything official. It was a folded receipt, thin paper, slightly yellowed, tucked inside the back pocket of a jacket hanging in the hall closet. Linda's jacket. I only noticed it because I was putting away laundry. The paper slipped out and floated to the floor. I almost stepped on it. I picked it up without thinking. Then I read the header. Estate jewelry purchase. Cash transaction. My fingers tightened. The date was 3 days after my mother's funeral. 3 days. The receipt listed items in neat black ink. Pearl necklace, sold. Diamond bracelet, sold. Each line felt like a small betrayal written calmly, professionally, without shame. At the bottom was a total, a number large enough to make my breath catch. I folded the receipt slowly and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That night, I sat at my laptop long after the house went quiet. My father had fallen asleep in his chair again, the TV murmuring to no one. Linda's bedroom door was closed. I logged into the family computer. The password was the same one she'd always used, my father's birthday. She never imagined anyone would look. The bank website loaded. One joint account, multiple transfers, always just under the amount that triggered alerts. 5,000 here, 3,000 there. Never round numbers, always spaced out. She hadn't been reckless. She'd been confident. I opened a spreadsheet and started copying dates, amounts, recipients. Every transfer led to the same place, her personal account, an account my father's name was not on. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't grief. This was planning. I checked the dates again. The first transfer happened 2 weeks before my mother died, while she was still alive, while she was still wearing those pearls. Something cold crawled up my spine. Linda had already been positioning herself. The jewelry was just the beginning. The next morning, I asked my father a simple question. Did you sign anything recently? He frowned. What do you sign? Papers, forms, bank stuff. He shrugged weakly. Linda handles all that. I just sign where she tells me. I nodded. Inside, something hardened. That afternoon, while Linda was out shopping, I searched the file cabinet. The bottom drawer stuck. It always had. I pulled harder. Inside were folders labeled in Linda's handwriting. Taxes, insurance, medical, and one red folder, unlabeled. I opened it. My name wasn't on anything inside. My father's was. Power of attorney documents, unsigned but filled out. Linda's name typed neatly in the agent line. Effective date, pending. My mouth dried. She wasn't just stealing, she was positioning herself to control everything. money, assets, decisions. I took photos, every page, every signature line. Then I put everything back exactly where I found it. That night, Linda sat across from me at dinner. She smiled. She talked about yoga, about how good it felt to declutter the house. "Your mom kept too many things," she said lightly. "It's healthier this way." I nodded and smiled back, because now I understood something important. Linda believed control was invisible, that as long as she acted calm and reasonable, no one would question her. She believed grief made people stupid. She believed silence meant consent. 2 days later, I met with the lawyer again. I placed the receipt on his desk, then the spreadsheet, then the photos of the documents. He didn't interrupt. He just nodded slowly. "This is more than theft." "What is it?" I asked. "Financial exploitation, breach of fiduciary duty, potential fraud." My pulse steadied. "And the money?" I asked. He leaned forward. "We don't take it yet." "Why not?" "Because she's still moving it." He smiled slightly. "And the more she moves, the more she exposes herself." I understood then. This wasn't a sprint. It was a trap. I went home that evening and acted like nothing had changed. I asked Linda if she needed help. I thanked her for taking care of things. I let her think she was winning. And she believed it. The transfers increased. 10,000, then 15,000. She started shopping online, luxury sites, designer stores. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was celebrating. One night I overheard her on the phone again. "I'm almost done," she whispered. "Once everything's settled, we'll be comfortable." Comfortable. At my mother's expense. At my father's ignorance. At my silence. That night, I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it simply Evidence. Inside, I placed everything: receipts, statements, photos, dates, screenshots. I backed it up. Twice. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Linda thought she was draining an account. She had no idea she was filling a file. And every dollar she touched was tightening the net. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast. This was something else. This was patience. And patience always wins. The hardest part wasn't what I did next. It was what I didn't do. I didn't confront her. I didn't warn my father. I didn't stop the spending. I let it happen. Because the lawyer was right. The more confident Linda became, the sloppier she got. And sloppy people write their own confessions. From that day on, I played my role perfectly. The quiet stepchild, the agreeable presence, the one who didn't ask questions. When Linda came home with shopping bags, I smiled. When she talked about treating herself, I nodded. When she mentioned how stressful it was managing finances after everything we've been through, I told her she was doing great. Inside, I was counting. Not money, mistakes. The first big one came a week later. She opened a brand new credit card. I knew because she bragged about it. "Great limit," she said proudly. At dinner, she laughed, twirling pasta like this was just life working out in her favor. She didn't realize something important. Credit cards require income verification, and she didn't have income. Not really. She had transfers, and transfers leave fingerprints. That night I logged everything: card issuer, Date opened, initial charge. The next mistake came when she tried to get clever. She transferred money from my father's account into a second personal account, different bank, different institution. She thought spreading it out made it safer. It didn't. It made it traceable, because now there was a pattern. Joint account, into Linda's account. If you alert him too early, she'll stop. So I swallowed it. Every time. Then came the moment I was waiting for. Linda sat at the kitchen table one morning, frowning at her phone. "That's weird," she muttered. I stayed quiet. My transfer didn't go through. I looked up slowly. "Which transfer?" She froze for half a second, then waved it off. "Just moving things around." But her fingers were already tapping, fast, panicked. She tried again, then again. Nothing. That afternoon, she called the bank. I heard everything from the hallway. "I don't understand," she snapped. "I've never had an issue before." Pause. "Yes, I'm the account holder." Pause. "What do you mean under review?" Her voice rose. "No one told me anything." I smiled for the first time in weeks, because the trap was closing. The lawyer had filed a quiet request, not a lawsuit, not a confrontation, a temporary hold based on suspected financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, my father. The bank froze everything pending review. Linda's accounts, both of them, her cards, her transfers, all paused. She stormed into the living room. "What did you do?" she demanded, pointing at me like a loaded weapon. I met her eyes calmly. "Nothing." She searched my face, looking for fear, guilt, weakness. She found none. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You've been whispering things." I shrugged. Maybe they noticed the pattern. Her face changed, not anger, fear, real fear. That night she didn't sleep. Neither did I, because the next step wasn't about freezing money. It was about taking it back, legally, completely, and permanently. The lawyer called the next morning. "She moved enough," he said. "We're ready." I closed my eyes. Good. Because Linda thought a frozen account was the worst thing that could happen. She had no idea what zero feels like yet. The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and quiet authority. That was the first thing I noticed. Soft lighting, neutral walls, voices lowered out of habit, not respect. This wasn't a place where people raised their voices. It was a place where decisions were made and lived with. The bank manager didn't rush me. He didn't smile either. He read, page by page, transfer logs, notarized statements, the joint account agreement, the medical affidavit confirming my father's cognitive decline. He paused more than once, cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses. Finally, he looked up. "Just to confirm," he said carefully, "you are acting under a valid power of attorney granted before the transactions occurred." "Yes." "And you are requesting a full clawback of funds transferred without informed consent." "That's correct." He nodded slowly. "These transactions meet the criteria for reversal." I exhaled through my nose, not relief, focus. He turned his monitor slightly so I could see it. A list of transfers filled the screen. Dates, amounts, Linda's name over and over again. "He needed to ask," he continued, voice steady, "are you aware that this action will zero out her accounts?" I met his eyes. Yes. He hesitated, just a moment, not because he couldn't do it, because he knew exactly what it meant. "All right," he said quietly. His fingers moved. One confirmation, then another. The cursor hovered. "Proceed?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Proceed." Click. The screen refreshed. Numbers changed, and just like that, every dollar Linda had taken disappeared, gone from her accounts, returned to where they belonged, not to me, to my father, to the estate, to the truth. The bank manager leaned back. "It's done." I nodded, thanked him, stood up, and walked out. I didn't call Linda. I didn't warn her. I went home. She was already there, pacing, phone in hand, face tight. She turned when she saw me. You did something." I set my bag down calmly. "Did I?" "My cards declined, all of them, every single one." She laughed sharply. "You think this is funny?" I looked at her, really looked. The woman who thought she was clever, the woman who thought grief was weakness, the woman who thought silence was ignorance. "I think," I said slowly, "you should sit down." She didn't. She stormed past me to the kitchen, throwing drawers open, her laptop, her tablet, her phone. She logged into her banking app once, twice, 3 times. Her face drained of color. "No," she whispered, then louder, "No, no, no." She turned toward me, eyes wild. "You can't do this. That's my money." I replied, "It never was." She lunged toward me. "You stole from me." I didn't move. "I reclaimed stolen funds. There's a difference." She started shaking. "You ruined me," she hissed. "You ruined everything." I tilted my head. "No, Linda, you did." She screamed then, not words, sound, raw, panicked. She grabbed her phone and dialed the bank, a lawyer, anyone. Her voice cracked with each call. Each time the answer was the same. "We can't discuss that. The funds were reversed legally. Please consult your attorney." She dropped on the couch like something had finally snapped. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. I crossed my arms. "You could start by telling the truth." She laughed bitterly. "To who? Your father? He doesn't even know." I inhaled slowly. "He does now." She froze. I stepped aside. My father stood in the doorway. He looked smaller than usual, older, but his eyes were clear, focused. He held a folder in his hands, the red one. Linda stared at him. "You told him?" she asked hoarsely. I nodded. He deserved to know. My father spoke quietly. "I trusted you." She opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing came out. "There's more," I added. I placed another document on the table, an eviction notice, legal, signed, dated. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "Oh, I am." "You have 30 days, I continued, "to leave." Her breath hitched. "You can't do that to me." I shrugged. "You already did it to yourself." She looked around the house, at the walls, the furniture, the life she thought she was securing. It was never hers, and now she knew. She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. "This isn't over," she said, voice trembling. "I'll fight this." I nodded calmly. "You can try." She left without slamming the door. She didn't have the energy. The silence afterwards was heavy, but clean. My father sat at the kitchen table long after she was gone, staring at the same spot where she used to place her phone, her purse, her entitlement. He said finally, "I didn't see it." His voice wasn't defensive, just tired. "I didn't want to." I sat across from him. "That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." He nodded slowly. "The truth is, grief makes people cling to what's familiar, even when it hurts them." Linda counted on that. She counted on silence, on confusion, on the idea that no one would challenge her because it was easier not to. She was wrong. The next few weeks were quiet, legally quiet. No dramatic court scenes, no screaming matches, just consequences unfolding exactly the way they were supposed to. Her lawyer tried, briefly. The moment the bank records, receipts, timestamps, and notarized statements were presented, the fight evaporated. There was nothing to argue, no loophole, no misunderstanding, just facts. Linda lost access to every account she had touched. She was ordered to return the remaining jewelry proceeds. The rest she had already spent. That wasn't my problem. The eviction went through without delay. She tried to ask for more time. The judge denied it. Financial exploitation, he said calmly, doesn't earn sympathy. I didn't attend that hearing. I didn't need to. Some victories are quieter when you don't watch them happen. My father and I began rebuilding something neither of us realized we'd lost: trust. He started managing his own finances again, with help, real help, not control disguised as care. We sold the house a few months later, not out of spite, out of freedom. Too many memories, too many ghosts. We moved into a smaller place near the water, somewhere peaceful, somewhere no one felt entitled to anything. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft gold, my father turned to me. "Your mother would be proud," he said. I swallowed. "She already taught me," I replied. "I just finally listened." I never heard from Linda again, not directly, but I heard enough. She bounced between friends, then relatives, then silence. The kind of silence that follows people who burn every bridge they cross. I don't celebrate her downfall. I don't need to. Justice doesn't require joy. It requires balance. And balance was restored. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty, if wiping her account clean was too far. I always answer the same way: no, because I didn't take anything from her. I gave everything back to where it belonged, to truth, to dignity, to the woman's jewelry she tried to turn into a vacation. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's this: love does not mean allowing yourself to be erased. Family does not mean surrendering your boundaries. And silence is not kindness when someone is stealing from you. My stepmother thought she was clever. She thought she could rewrite ownership, history, and grief in her favor. Instead, she learned a lesson most people learn too late. The law is patient, and so is someone who finally stops being afraid. That's the end of my story, but I want to ask you something. If someone sold the last pieces of your mother and told you it was for your own good, would you stay quiet, or would you do exactly what I did? Tell me what you think, and tell me where you're listening from, because stories like this aren't rare. They're just rarely told by the ones who win.